What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world? I would like to welcome you back to the Real Talk with Zuby podcast. Today's episode, we've got another special guest. His name is Bill Masur, and he is the founder of the Men of Character Conference. Welcome to the show, Bill. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, Zuby. Good to be here, man. Doing well.
All good, man. So why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Tell people a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So last year, I put together, like you said, a conference called the Men of Character Conference. It was an online conference. Got about 40 speakers, couple thousand attendees. Was really well received and was really like the end result of my own personal development. So I'm just some guy from the U.S. Was your, very good student type, I guess, tech person, nerdy type guy. And have just been looking for how to become a better man, how to become a better person. And I've hit some stride with that in the last 2 years. And so the conference was sort of an outgrowth of that. And now I've got some other things that I'm sure we'll talk about that I'm working on as well. And, active on Twitter just as you are and growing that audience as well.
Don't do it, man. Twitter's dangerous.
Don't do it. You die from the dopamine hits. Yeah.
Oh, good.
No, it is dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, and the death threats and all that. But maybe you don't. Maybe you're not.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're receiving those yet, but
I steer clear of the when it says like high voltage. I try to just say, hey, here's what I want to create.
Yeah.
And I try to steer clear of the those huge red flags.
Yeah.
But you I like how you approach them because it's like purely rational. Purely rational.
It's the best way to annoy.
Logic.
It's the best way to annoy people, man. Best way to annoy them.
100%.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So why don't we rewind a little bit and go back to tell us a little bit more about your life.
Yeah, so I grew up with a single mother, pretty much. My father was around, but he was sick. He was alcoholic and had mental issues, bipolar. So I had a very good childhood from the standpoint of my mother, like, was a great mom, but I never had that like father figure, father role, other than seeing him as like a nice person. Like he cared about me. He just had issues, right? He just never dealt with those issues. So I had other father figures like grandfather and uncles. And I just sort of went through life, like school came easy to me and got in a ton of school debt and got out, got a job and just had reached like 29, 30 and was like, wait a minute, all these easy choices have led to a life that I'm not really sure I want. Like, this is not fulfilling. It's like, I don't know. I think a lot of people have this feeling like deep inside, you're like, there's something more meaningful that you're meant for. Like if you've ever reached a point where you're like you've lost your way a little bit. Yeah. So some people joked with me that was like a midlife crisis. But it was like a turning point. I took a huge risk, left big company I was at, failed miserably, sort of had to humble myself, all this entitlement of like, you're raised by a single mom. You start to think that you're owed the world if you have the type of mom that I did.
Yeah.
Which there's some benefits too, because you get this unearned confidence. But then when the world hits you in the mouth with like, well, no one really cares about your problems. You're not that special. And I had to just humble myself, realize that I didn't have good work ethic. I really didn't have any like sellable or valuable skills. So I just spent this was like 6 years ago. So I've spent the last 5-6 years just working on myself and doing more than reading as well, but actually putting it into my life and in a bunch of different ways. And the benefits have been incredible and led to the conference and Twitter and, getting to know people like yourself. And so it's been pretty fantastic.
That's cool, man. So when you initially left that job you were doing when you were sort of in your late 20s, early 30s, what was it that you said you failed miserably, but what did you fail miserably at? What was it that you were trying to do?
Yeah, so I was literally like a deer in headlights. Like I quit the job and I was like, I'm going to do my own thing. And I took like a month-long road trip around the US, which actually was a great decision. Got to see a lot of beautiful parts of the US and and sort of take some time to think. So, but then I went and tried to do like a tech company, and I just like you know how some people have jobs and the job actually keeps them on a schedule, keeps them accountable. When you're someone like me who grew up with, like, you go to school, you're told what to do, and then you do what they say and you get a good grade. And then you come out into the real world, unless you have like a company telling you that, if you're not like self motivated, self-driven, self-starter, or if it's beaten out of you, then you just don't know what to do. So I just had bad habits. So I would, even though I was needed to do stuff and work on my thing, I was like not working on it, BSing, or just like managing to distract myself. So I ended up going and looking for, I realized that, and I was like, you know what, let me go and work at a startup. Maybe if I just sort of get on the tails of a growing ship, I can do that. So that was, I did like a sales job, sort of a jack of all trades type role at a startup. And that sales job, like, it just toughened my skin. Like being rejected, I was trying to sell to small businesses in New York City, and I would just, here I am with a master's degree, walking into a liquor store, and they would literally just look at me like I was some homeless guy off the street. Like they're like, what are you? So it was like very humbling. And then I realized like what it actually took to make a sale, to like what are the motivations of people do? Like, what is business? Like, how does that actually work, rather than like the school concept of it, which is outdated and has nothing to do with reality. So that was like the beginning stages of that.
Awesome, man. And so after that, at what stage were you in that, when you were like, you know what, this is not working. Let me go and do something else.
Yeah. So I did 2 sales jobs, and then I just needed, like, at that point I was already a father and married. I just needed more money. So I started applying for better jobs. I'm like, all right, I originally had done like product management, which maybe tech people will know what it is, but that's what I do now. But so at that point I was doing tech sales type jobs. So I went and I interviewed. The real turning point was this one interview. I went and I interviewed at an enterprise tech, think of like an Oracle database competitor, over in New Jersey, in Fort Lee, New Jersey. At that point I had sold, like, I had no, like, I was basically running through all types of, I sold my car. So I literally was taxi ride to the interview. And I show up and the guy just kicks me out. He's like, you're not prepared. Like, here's a pamphlet, read this and come back and sell me this product in a week. He's like, I looked at your resume. It looks like you're smart, like, but you obviously didn't prepare for this. And then, and as I'm walking out, he's like, and wear diapers. And I'm just like he literally, this is an older gentleman, right? Like one of these old school like sales guys.
Yeah.
And I just left, and I thought in the taxi ride home, I'm like, I can take this 2 ways. I can get like really offended by because like everyone would be able to tell themselves like, oh, who's this guy think he is to say that to me, and da. And I guess one of the things I realized was like, you know what, this guy is challenging me. He's like, he doesn't know me, and he's looking at my resume, saying like, and he's right. I didn't prepare for it. I didn't really want the job. I wanted the money. I didn't want the job. And he realized that. So I'm like, okay, you know what? This guy's challenging me. So I took that week and I just studied the whole thing, and I came back and I like nailed it. First, him and this sales guy and another guy, I'm in there, and they like stopped me like 5 minutes in. They're like, all right, stop. This is like, you nailed it. Everything's great. Let's bring in the CEO. CEO comes in, same thing, like 5 minutes in, they're like, all right, stop. And they're like, well, all right, we know you can sell. You're a smart guy. You learn the whole product. Like, you impressed us. Like, who are you? Who's Bill Masur? Like, what is he passionate about? So at that point I was so like, I did what, you're from the UK, so maybe this analogy won't work as well, but like when a American football team is up like 40-0 at halftime, and then they just start running the ball and packing it in and thinking that they've got it, in the bag.
Getting complacent.
Yeah. So that's what I did. Like, as soon as I thought like, I've got this opportunity, I didn't want to share my desperation for the fact that I needed this job. So I just blew it, and they didn't really get to see like who I was. I didn't share that how, that I was willing to do whatever it took to, to do the job well, and to do what they needed. So then I went home, and they called me like 3 hours later, and they're like, yeah, we're going to pass. Like, they didn't waste any time. It was
Yeah.
like no nonsense. We're going to pass. And, you seem like really smart. You were able to present, but we just didn't see that spark or whatever.
Yeah.
So my wife literally was like looking at me. She's like, look, if you want this job, go and get it. So like, go and get it. So I got back in a taxi and tried to go get this job. And the one guy was still there, and he's like, look, man, it's too late. Sale is over. You failed. But that whole experience, like having these three gentlemen that were just judging me from like more of a professional standpoint, like I think I took their positive criticisms to heart. I mean, their positive things that they said about me to heart, like the fact that I was intelligent, that I could speak well, and all of that, the stuff that I had sort of doubted. And then they were like, oh, well, you don't have the like, who are you? You're not like somebody who's passionate. And I thought to myself, well, I know I'm passionate. Like, that's not the question in my mind. Like, I have big dreams and I want to accomplish big things. So something just sparked in my mind. Maybe it was like hitting like sort of rock bottom, losing this one opportunity that would have probably solved a lot of financial problems.
Yeah.
So after that, it's just been like it was just a epiphany or whatever you want to call it. And I had like, within 2 weeks, I found another job paying more in a more relevant field, which I'm still now in product management. And it was just like sort of the spark that lit the match.
Awesome, man. Well, that sounds positive, man. That sounds really positive. So you're
Yeah,
so you've got a family, you said, right? You're a husband and a father?
that's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. How many kids?
Two.
Two.
Yeah.
Nice, man. And how has that, so obviously we're living in an interesting time where there seems to be a lot of questions about the idea of masculinity. You yourself run an online conference called the Men of Character Conference. So
Yeah.
what do you think is going on right now in the Western world with masculinity? I've heard people say things like there's a boy crisis, or there's a crisis of masculinity, and then you have other ideas sort of pathologizing masculinity, or saying it's, there's this thing called toxic masculinity, and there's this and there's that. And it seems like in the grander scheme of things, boys are failing at a higher rate than girls in school. You're seeing far more women getting degrees now than men are, whilst there's still this narrative that there's some sort of oppressive patriarchy going on, which doesn't seem like the patriarchy is doing a great job, in my personal opinion, if that's the case. But what do you think is going on? What is masculinity to you, and why do you think there's this issue, and what do you think can be done about it?
Yeah, I think like I explained before, I was raised by my mother primarily, and didn't have that intimate relationship with, like, well, how should a husband treat a wife, and how does a father approach his own life, and or even like an actualized man, whatever you want to call it. So it's been sort of a journey for me to try to understand what that is, and part of it has been through seeing examples, and part of it has been through my own living. I think, to me, masculinity, I think I disagree a little bit with the Twitter corner of like the manosphere, whatever they call it, where I think they ignore the like, there's a book that I read called Steel and Velvet, and that's how it describes the ideal man. Like, there's strength and all the attributes that are typically character and masculinity and strength, that are prescribed, that describe one part of masculinity, and then he calls it velvet, which is the other tender side, like your ability to, how you deal with the woman in your life, or your wife, or even your children. Like, you can't be that. Children are not, one to warm up to someone who's constantly aggressive. And so, to me, that is the ideal man. Like, there's two sides to it. We all have masculine energy and we all have feminine energy, and men tend to have more masculine energy and women tend to have more feminine. And the purpose of your life should be to sort of fully express whatever those levels are within you. Now, I think in society, there definitely isn't great role models for men anymore. I think that's one of the reasons why I started Men of Character. And I want to really just build it out right beyond the conference. It'll be just the Men of Character, and there'll be different activities and events going on around that. But it's around this whole idea. What example can we give? Can we give men and boys to have them have a clearer picture of like what should they do with their life? And I don't think that is very clear. Like it's like, yeah, there's definitely, you can definitely make the case that a lot of boys are lost, and we see it all over the place with different school shootings and all different events like that.
So what do you think is the cause, or what do you think are the primary causes of that?
Well, I think we don't, all the things that, right, there's some truth to the saying, like to the, and I forget who said it. I forget if it was Elliot Host where I heard it, but that, men sort of have to be made, right? There's in traditionally there was like initiations of, right, where when a boy was literally like taken from his mother, and the men in the tribe would like officially make him a man if he passed certain tests. And I think I felt that as a young man, where it was like, where's the line of me, where I feel like I'm an adult or I'm a man, and I don't feel like that was clear. And I think all the positive influences, like a good mentor, a good set of a good father, all of the things that help guide men, right? If you don't have those things, then all that pent up testosterone and aggression, which is are naturally traits of men, sort of get perverted if they don't have the healthy outlets to it. Like if you don't have men who are capable of being strong, but then are also kind, then you'll get the bad part of it, right? Men who are strong but evil or have bad intentions. So I think that's where you don't see example, right? All you hear is the news, which some of these cases, right, are true, right? Where somebody's harassing or has raped a woman or whatever, and all of these are the masculinity sort of perverted, the uses of aggression towards evil. So it's like I feel like we need more examples of the uses of masculine traits towards good.
Yeah. So at what stage in your life do you feel that you went through that sort of rite of passage? Was there a particular situation or time frame or incident? What was it that led you from feeling like, okay, I don't know what being a man is all about. I haven't had all these role models myself. So at what stage for yourself did you go through that transition period?
I think it was probably about 4 years ago. And actually it sounds ridiculous a little bit, but that interview on some level was like, it was like three older men analyzing me, right? I didn't have the protection of my mother anymore, or of her thoughts. It's like, so that was one. Then about like, what was it, 2 years ago, I was laid off, in sort of like a not great way, very political, how people describe a lot of ways that corporate America will mistreat their employees. So I was misled, and I would say that killed the other part of the innocence in me, thinking like, oh, well, people like me, and as long as I'm liked, they'll just keep me around. And it was like this reality of like, no, I need to be aware, of not only my environment, like the physical environment, but what my situation is, how people view me, and how I can how I can control that more, how I can, what things can I do to control the outcomes of my life more. And I think I've become more purposeful, and a lot of things have helped that, like just having more discipline and being consistent and learning better habits. But it took like the full 5 years to undo 20 years of bad habits of learning the wrong thing from school and from my own nature.
Yeah. And what did you do? What was the process?
So I think it first started, that humbling aspect of realizing like, no, like you don't know how to sell. You don't have any real skills at any company. Like you don't stand out in any way. So what are you going to do about it? So I started really with the physical. So I started meditating, going to the gym, and those things laid like a foundation of just making me feel better.
Every
Like
man needs to
mentally.
go to the gym. Did you guys hear that? Anyone who's listening to this right now who doesn't go to the gym,
Right.
who wonders why I evangelize about the gym, this is where it starts, man. Improve your body, and everything. The rest will follow.
Yeah, that's how Zuby does all these different activities consistently, because the backbone is the gym workout.
It genuinely is. The thing is, it actually is. Like, no matter how busy stuff gets, I don't skip the gym, because if I skip the gym, it makes everything else worse. Like how
Yeah.
well my training is going is actually quite a good barometer for how well the rest of the stuff in my life is going. If I start like falling off on that, or my diet, my eating habits, start getting a little sketchy or whatever, I find that yeah, my I get brain fog, my performance, my thinking, my
Yep.
concentration, all of it goes down. I look at myself in the mirror and I never let myself get out of shape per se, but I'll be looking in the mirror and I'm like, oh, I'm not looking as, strong or lean or
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I was before or whatever. And so it's like, okay, let me get back on track. And yeah, man, it's amazing. It has real cognitive, beyond the normal sort of physical health benefits. I think the cognitive benefits and, instilling discipline, because you're not going to make progress in the gym unless you're disciplined. You can't just go once and, it's done. It's like, you got to stay at it. You got to keep going. You're going to have times when you're trying to gain weight and the weight's not going up, or you're trying to lift more and the weight's not going up, or you're trying to lose weight and the
That's
weight's not
right.
going down. And you've got to just persist. So if you can apply that same template to anything else in life, then, I think you will be successful eventually.
Yeah, I think I agree 100%. I think the fact, so my progress in the gym has been like very slow to
Hmm.
come, but I 100% think that that was like the whole point of the lesson. It was like you could only notice over like 6 months or a year that I was actually making progress.
Yeah.
Like other out, and the other thing was, it was a nice way for me to, it's like all internally driven. I don't even, even though still right now I have a couple thousand followers on Twitter, I don't post physique pics. Like, I'm not criticizing anyone does. What I'm saying is I do all of that because it's good for me. I want to do it.
Sure.
And it was like completely internally driven.
Hmm.
And it's like, other good behaviors, right? Like saving. If you save money, it's not impressive externally, right?
No,
Unless you
no.
put screenshots of your savings account, which no, no one does. The purpose of saving is for your your internal long-term well-being and
Hmm.
your family or whatever. It's all internally motivated. If you want to look wealthy, you just go and buy a bunch of garbage and cars and huge house, and
Yeah.
you could still look wealthy and be incredibly poor.
You don't even need to go that far. You just buy like a Gucci belt and a Versace
That's right.
t-shirt and some expensive shoes and maybe like a watch,
That's
or,
right.
something like that. But yeah, you could still be, that person could still not have a car and, want a car and not have a car, or, still be living in a basement or something, but just externally, they'll be in the club popping champagne, blowing
That's right.
80% of the money that they've made that week. They'll go and spend it on a Saturday night trying to look rich to impress people they don't even know and who don't even like them. The whole thing's very bizarre to me, but I'm glad I saw the stupidity and all that when I was actually very young,
Uh-huh.
which I'm quite grateful for. So I had a couple of friends who kind of got sucked into the, especially in London, the sort of like West End, get a table and buy drinks and spend $1,000 on a table. And I skipped all that because I was like, this is dumb. Like,
Yeah.
why would I want to do that? Who am I trying to impress here? And, I think most of them have snapped out of it by now. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you're trying to live to, like you said, even with the gym, I think there's nothing wrong with starting going to the gym to you know it, even to look good to other people, right? If you're out of shape and it's like, okay, I want a girlfriend, I want a boyfriend, whatever, or I want the to look hot to the other sex, like that can get you started. I'm like, look, if that's what motivates you,
Yeah.
go ahead and get in there. But in the long term, anyone who trains for a long term period, they're gonna be doing it for themselves, because trying to impress other people is only going to motivate you for so long. Beyond that, it's like, okay, I'm doing this for me. I'm not trying to. I have zero reason to be any stronger than I already am, but I still want to get stronger just because I know there's still some untapped potential in there. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
by all means and standards, to anybody else, people are like, dude, you're done. And I'm like, no, I'm not done yet. I'm like, I can still add another 3% to this lift. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It might
No,
take
there's
10 years, but I
incredible
can do it.
lessons in it.
Yeah.
There's incredible lessons. So I think the other thing to me was like a certain level of self-respect that I gained for myself. Like
Mm.
just the fact that it I think for me, one of the things that became apparent when I got out of that job and I failed, like I needed proof. I needed some tangible proof in my life. Like, no, you're worth something. Like, and that physical aspect of going to the gym and just showing myself that I could be consistent and that I felt better and I looked better and that I was stronger, just generally speaking. It was just a heck of a physical, of a lesson for me. So that was huge.
Awesome, man. So besides the gym, what were the other steps that you took in terms of your own self-improvement or self-mastery?
So I just made sure that, I know a lot of people, and I've thought about this a lot, but I know a lot of people promote like, oh, work on your strengths, work on, focus on your strengths and just double down on that. And I think for someone like myself, like I didn't know what my strengths were. So I've always made it sure like I'm covering all the bases, right?
Mhm.
So so once I started going to the gym, then it was like, okay, what in my career can I do? Like I updated my wardrobe. Like I wanted to make sure I spoke up and spoke my thoughts in meetings when I should.
Mhm.
So I just started to put more of a focus. It became like I wanted to make it more of a way of being. Like, am I just, going through the motions every day, or am I like intently acting each day and trying to get the most out of each day? So I
Mhm.
really focused on like when I would wake up, like almost getting into a routine of like, this is a new day, like realizing, like, because it is, I think it's very true. Like a lot of the people that say, every day is like a new opportunity. Like it is.
Yeah.
My last year has pretty much proven that. Like a year ago, I had no Twitter following. I was just some guy vicariously following some accounts, seeing Ed Lattimore and Alexander Cortez.
Mhm.
And then one day, I just literally just decided, oh, I'm going to do a conference because all this information has been useful to me. I
Okay.
think if I curate it and I present it in a way, it could be useful to other people that maybe other men that haven't been exposed to this. It was like literally that happened in like 3 days where I started the conference.
Yeah.
So I think that approach of like, attacking each day and trying to make sure I put my best foot forward in all the different aspects of my life and work and relationships and my health has been huge.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about the Men of Conference character itself. Um, you
Yeah.
touched on it already, but tell us a little bit more about what exactly it is and what you've done already, and also where you're trying to take it in the future.
Yep. So originally it was supposed to be like a fatherhood type conference, but then I thought, well, what's the root? What am I different here in the message I'm trying to get out? And I think that the central part is around character, right? You can be like jacked, but you can be a dishonest person.
Mhm.
And like I think, I don't know if it's a Plato quote or whatever, but you could be physically fit and mentally fit. And I think this is the ideal man. So in my conference, it covers health topics, finance, personal finance, style, mindset. So I've got Ed Lattimore, Elliot Hulse, Tanner Guzzi, whole different 40 talks. So even James Clear talking about his book Atomic Habits. So it's really me putting everything that I had learned over the last 5 years and trying to get, like, if you had an hour with each of these subject experts, what's the most useful information with each of them? So I was the one that wrote, had all the questions. I did most of them as interviews. So you get like, what do I think is the most useful thing from this speaker? So we had 2,000 people registered, and it aired live for 3 days, and then about 150 people bought the conference and get access to it after the fact.
Mhm.
So that was like my first part of what I think is more of a bigger mission for me around helping men build their own character.
Awesome, man. So what's the plan for the future with it? Are you going to be doing another conference this year? Are you going to look to do a live event? Are you looking at other kind of products or programs? What have you got in plan for Men of Character? I like that name, by the way. I think that's a great title, Men of Character.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's been weird too because I see it. I'm reading a bunch of books from like the 1800s, and they use the phrase. Not that it's not a common phrase. I just find this strange. I literally feel like I'm supposed to be doing this. I don't know how else to describe it.
You're talking to
Because
a
the more
you're talking to a
yeah,
musician. I understand those sort of weird phrases like, yeah, man, this is my passion. I know I was born to do this. Like that's how I as, as
Yeah,
as as rational as I am, that's really how I feel with my music. I'm like, no, this is
nice.
I'm on God's earth for this. Like I've been given this voice, these talents, everything I do. It's like I need to maximize what what has been put here. You know.
Yeah, and there, I feel like there's a forgotten part. Like there, we live in a capitalistic society, and everything is so, there are all these things that you can get enjoyment from and distract yourself and entertainment. And I really think that, forget about the sexes. Everybody has become very self-centered and narcissistic. And I think that a lot of the stuff that I want to talk about is to like remember what's actually the point. Like in my opinion, like what's the whole point of this thing is to have a family is one of them. Like to like the ultimate goal of a man in most cases, some maybe men don't want to have families, but I think we've lost the home life is what I'm getting at. I think we've sacrificed. It's like when you tell people, oh, I homeschool my kids, and then the immediate criticism, like, oh, but what about socialization? Like we actually have it backwards. We have thrown out the home life because we think that socializing is more important. And that's not to say that it's not, but we don't actually remember that the person's character, the type of person they are, is built in the home.
Yeah.
And I sort of want to get back. So getting back to your question. So I just released the design of a watch that I created for myself. So it's like a men of character. Almost, I wanted it to almost be like a symbol. Like if you're part of the tribe, you believe that men need to build character, then you'll have this watch. I'm wearing it right now. And so I got a lot more interest than even I thought. I was gonna probably bundle this with other things. But people have already paid me for it. A lot of friends and family, but even Chris Johnson and a couple and Fatah Singh have already paid me for it. They reached out to me like, I need this one.
Nice.
So I'm actually gonna sell that. But then the watch will be bundled with an in-person conference, which I plan to do later this year. That's been one of the things that I've been wanting to do. That was like the initial reason why I did the Men of Character to begin with. I felt like there needed to be an in-person place you could meet others that felt, other like-minded men that felt the same way. And then the conference itself, I haven't transcribed it. So one of the other projects I'll be announcing soon will be like a book which will include some of the portions of the transcript. So it's be like becoming a man of character, and then you'll have tidbits from 40 different men that spoke in the conference, and I'll sort of curate that. So I just started. I've got someone working on the cover. I'm do sort of what you did, put the pre-order up and do that. And then the last piece is I have something that I'm calling the Inner Circle, which is more of like a group a small group that will meet with me on a monthly basis and sort of help you move towards your goals, help you take a look at almost the evaluation that I did by myself, right? Looked at my health, did my blood work, started all the things that I did to get where I'm at. So I might not be, Tony Robbins or whoever you could pay millions of dollars for, but I might be slightly ahead of you in one aspect. And, or you might not have a group of men that you feel like are motivated and are ambitious. So you can join this group and get with other ambitious men and almost build like an online tribe around that.
Yeah, that sounds dope, man.
Yeah.
That sounds dope.
Thank you.
So like you were talking about building a Twitter following. Is Twitter the only channel that you're active on at the moment?
Yeah, currently, yeah. I literally all I have is my Twitter account, and I had the first conference website.
Okay.
I think I've kept it. Like I learned from my first time trying business, that's like you just focus on what you can start with, and all this like you need to be on all these social media. Like if you can do that, great, right? Like you do that
tough,
really
man.
well.
It's tough.
It's tough.
It's tough.
But since I don't do this full time, my decision was no. Whatever I'm doing, I'm gonna focus on, and ways where I can like share resources, I'll do that, right? So some of the conference was then I made a couple of podcasts. So like I'll reuse content.
Gotcha.
So you could say I have a podcast, the conference, and Twitter right now.
Awesome,
but
man.
I guess I'll be expanding that shortly. So yeah,
Twitter's a funny place. It's I think
Yeah, for sure.
I personally think it's the best social network. Obviously, not everyone does because it's not the biggest one, but it's a funny place because I've connected with so many amazing people on there. This podcast itself, literally every single guest on here, I've contacted through Twitter essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's just amazing as a communication tool and as a way to put stuff out there, and also as a content platform that can lead to things going viral. So what's your experience on Twitter been like? I mean, I think you tend to stay away from
Yeah.
the stay away from the drama. And how do you even manage to do that? With me, I think it's like I don't sometimes I purposely kick the hornet's nest, but sometimes I'm not even trying to kick it and I just kick it. I kind of like trip over it anyway. Like it seems like no matter what I say on there now, like it doesn't even matter what I say now. Like I've just been like sort of highlighted as some controversial Twitter personality. So
Yeah.
I could literally say, you know, the water is wet and roses are red, and somebody will have something
Someone
to
will be
say.
like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I think so. One of the things I realized now that I have a couple thousand people follow me, I think we're in an amazing time. Like it's almost like you, because I've noticed like people reach out to me now and they'll like make assumptions. Like people
Mm,
will think I'm a millionaire, that I'm like like just because of a following. And I've realized that these social media networks have almost allowed, since celebrities do join social media, right? And then
mm,
they have huge followings. It's almost like the huge following creates like a halo effect or something.
mm,
And then it actually, like you just said, gives you access even to reach out to someone else who also has a big following. It gives you like some credibility. So I think I fully appreciate that like this is an opportunity for me. Like what is it that I want to put out into the world?
mm.
Like and even, you know, you like my kids will see it, right? One day if you have kids, if Twitter is still around and all the you don't delete your tweets or anything, they'll see they'll see like, well, what was my dad talking about? What the heck was this
Oh
guy
gosh,
ranting about?
I've never even
So
thought of it that way.
I do
That,
think of it that way. I feel
that's
like I've
funny.
let them, you know, because I do think you see a sense of a person's character
Oh, certainly.
over time. Like they, even if they think that they're putting out a persona,
Mm,
you can, just by a certain way that they put things, you can get some sense of who that person really is over time. You know, I spend so much time on Twitter that I feel like I've been a good judge of that.
yeah.
So you could, yeah, you like you said, there's some really great people, and then there's other parts of Twitter like that. You know, sometimes I click into and I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want nothing to do with what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I think you know, I've had some people like criticize me, and like everybody has, right? You're talking about it too. And I think the first time it happened, I was really tempted to respond, right?
Mm,
Like to get into whatever a Twitter beef. But I reached out to people like Carlos Deval and Fatah Singh, and I'm like, you know, because I've noticed that they were criticized and they've never said anything. So I'm like,
mm.
let me hear what they have to say, and they're like, don't respond, ignore it, ignore it. It's like in the short term, it might help you gain some followers, but you're just gonna get your time wasted.
Yeah.
So I've just stuck to that principle for the most part. Like I'll respond to people if I genuinely feel like somebody doesn't understand what I'm saying,
Mhm.
or they're wrong in some way, and they're honestly approaching something, I'll respond and I'll try to explain. And I've had some success doing that. But if I think you're coming at me like a troll or it's ridiculous, I just ignore, I mute, or I block, and I just don't.
You're a better man than me. You're a better man than me, Bill. Yeah. To
It's hard.
that said,
It's hard.
I respond probably to like if you think I out of the like I get such a sometimes my mentions just go crazy. And I'll literally like respond to 1 in 10, 1 in 20 of them. It'll look like I'm responding to like a lot of stuff. It's like I'm actually ignoring 90%. But
Yeah, no, I believe it.
sometimes there's just something I'm like, I have to say something to like
Yeah.
I just have to say something to this because sometimes it's just it's so ridiculous, or you
Well,
know,
it's always,
or if someone's trying to like defame you, right? If someone's trying to
yeah,
completely mischaracterize who you are or what you're saying,
yeah,
then that's when I'm like, no, I'm gonna defend myself here. I'm not gonna take, you know, if I write something and someone is like, oh, you're this or you're that, and they're trying to accuse me of something which I know I'm not,
yeah.
then I'll typically like publicly respond to that and be like, no, this is the situation. And yeah, you know, yeah, because it's a tricky one though. It's a tricky one. Like sometimes I have times where I kind of want to just be completely zen,
Yeah.
but like Yeah, I don't know. I can't be. It's not my, maybe it's just my personality type. Like I'm naturally a little bit argumentative,
Uh-huh.
not for the sake of arguing. You know what I mean? Like I don't go and like start crap for no reason. But
Yeah.
I like having debates. I like having discussions. So if I'm talking to someone or I say something and it gets completely misinterpreted or it seems like I'm completely not seeing eye to eye on with somebody or something, it's like
Yeah.
I'm kind of genuinely curious because I like to know how people tick. I think that's
Yeah.
like that's a gift and a curse, right? Because it's good to know because obviously if you're someone like myself who has anything to promote or sell or whatever, you want to know how people tick, you want to know how their brains work. But sometimes it can be so strange when you say one thing and their interpretation of it
Oh yeah.
is completely different to what you said. And I'm kind of like, wait, hang on here. Let me try to get into this person's brain a little bit and see like
Yeah.
are you just trying to be annoying or do you genuinely believe what you're saying? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
an ongoing one. I'll work it out one day. I'll work it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I probably haven't been attacked to the level that you have, like knock on wood.
I
But
don't
it'll
think many
probably
people
happen soon. So
have.
I don't know how I'll react to those. But
Yeah.
if it's around like ideas, because I think I have some pretty clear things that I believe in, and I'm so if you come at me and you're like I disagree and here's why, and I have an answer for you of why I think you're wrong, or maybe you have a point,
Mhm.
then I'll respond. I agree. I like having. I think it's cool too that you can have that debate in public, right? And then other
Yeah.
people. I've learned tons from seeing some conversation between two accounts that I respect, and they're hashing out something that maybe has been on my mind. So Twitter is weird that way. It's like this hive mind that we're building with different
Mm.
nodes, and it's crazy.
Yeah, man. So where do you think the future of all this goes? Where do you see, wow, all the things we've talked about, where do you see them going in the next, say, 10 to 15 years, especially as a father, especially as someone
Yep.
who's bringing, children up in the world right now? I mean, what do
I'm
you think the world is going to
optimistic.
be like that for them?
I I think I'm optimistic. If you look at the long trend of like humans and civilization, like generally speaking, we're on the uptrend. Now,
Mm.
does that mean that we won't have like another recession or some type of crisis? Probably. I think we're much better equipped if you even went back 100 years that to recover to our standard of living, it'll happen much quicker.
Mm.
So, and I'm also optimistic. I think the internet has given like before you used to have to either embrace the values of the church or of your family, not that any of those things are necessarily bad, but that was like your only options.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think I've grown up like I have a good family background, like my mother and my family is good, but I've been able to benefit from just the internet, and in this in my own honest search for truth
Mhm.
has brought me to a much better place. So I just think if my children now have me as a father, and with my wife, it's like they'll just benefit even more. And then the other day I was reading, it's a book actually called Character. So it's called Character, but it's by Samuel Smiles. It was written in the 1800s. This guy literally started the self-help movement. He wrote a book called Self-Help. But one of the interesting things, it's a must read. I'm like halfway through it because if you read it, you're like, this guy's predicting basically what's occurring. He talks about what happens when a civilization loses, when the people in it don't have any more, like they're immoral and they don't have character.
Mm.
And even he says, he's like, the only way to turn around like one of those situations is by individual, if there's a group of men left that are willing to build individual character again. And so it might be sound a little ridiculous, but I do think that our corner of Twitter or whatever is like the early signs of that occurring, like people just taking the individual responsibility to write their own relationships, their own life, and yeah, be the fathers and mothers that they want to be. So I'm very optimistic, and all the people that I've met in person through Twitter, like we haven't had the chance to meet yet, but we've talked now 3 times. So we've had a good amount. We're getting to know each other. But the other folks that I've met, like Carlos Deval and Tanner Guzzi, like they're like really good friends now, and
Awesome.
it's been pretty amazing to realize like there are other people out there that are of like mind. And so I don't know what is going to come of that in the long term exactly, but I'm just overall optimistic that yeah, that there's enough, that I've found enough good things, and that we can expose it to other men and other people where they can also improve their lives.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I think I think all these things are tools. Social media in general. I have such a mixed relationship with it as someone who's been using it heavily for like
Yeah,
12 years now or something like that. I mean, I've been on Twitter since July 20,
that's
2009.
crazy.
I've been on Twitter since July 2009. I've been on Facebook since 2004. So I've been on these things for like a long time. I've been on YouTube since
So you
2006.
mean that deadlift video wasn't overnight success?
No, that was 10 years, man. You know what?
You
Uh,
were there rubbing the sticks like, and then boom, 10 years later, fire
yeah,
lit.
dude. Jose Rosado, he made such a good point on that video when I was talking to him about it in person. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
not in person, like via Skype. And he said, you know what? That video took you like 12 years of training in the gym is what even made that video possible.
That's right.
Right. And I was like, that's such an interesting take because I was like, yo, it's crazy, like all this attention from a 9-second video. And he's like, yeah, but 99.9% of guys could not have lifted the
Would have
weight. And that,
never gotten to that.
yeah,
That's right.
they couldn't have lifted that weight. And by you even being able to lift that thing, that's what made that possible. So I was like, that's actually a really interesting framing. So it's like,
I think that's right. I
yeah,
was thinking that before you were talking, and I forgot. But when you were talking about the gym and all that, I was thinking that exact thing, that you all that effort you put into it actually led to that
yeah,
moment. And I always think, like, especially when you're younger, you want certain outcomes much quicker than they come in reality.
mm,
And I think that and I tweeted this the other day. It's like, if you just focus on the effort, and I know it's hard to do, and I'm guilty of it too. But if you just focus on bettering yourself in the effort, the outcomes eventually come. Now you
yeah.
can't control when they come because all that's outside your control. But like, you're a perfect example of that, 100%.
Thank you, man. I'm trying. I'm trying, man. By the end of this year, I want whatever whatever the Zuby brand is and whatever it is, wherever it is that it leads. There's a whole bunch of interesting opportunities out there, from the music to this podcast to getting this fitness book done and everything like that. I think I've got a pretty clear vision of where I want it to go now. So I think it's
Awesome,
like
brother.
yeah, it's a matter of execution. So I'm excited on that front. I'm excited with everything you're doing with the watch company, with the future conferences. And I think there's a lot of guys and girls out there who are just building some awesome stuff. I think if you can, it's okay to I'm not going to pretend to be someone who never gets involved in any BS online.
Yeah.
But if you can avoid just using all these tools for pure consumption and distraction, and
Yep.
you can actually, create something and become an authority or become some kind of like, online personality, online authority, whatever
Yep.
it is. The potential right now is just crazy. I'm going to be presenting at a tech conference in a couple weeks time, and there's going to be, it's estimated that by, I think it's 2030, so about 10 years, that 90 to 95% of the world's population is going to be online. By that time, there will
Wow.
be like, I think it's predicted that there will be something like 9 billion people with internet
Uh-huh.
access. So I think at the moment, 4 billion people are online. So a little bit over half.
That's crazy.
And yeah, it's estimated to go from that sort of like 55% up to 90%. And that's going to be 90% of more people too. So we've already had one internet and social media revolution, but that's going to happen again in South America, Africa, Asia, lots of the countries that
Yeah.
don't yet have that, infrastructure and high speed broadband yet. It's the same thing is going to happen. So I think, now's the time. If people aren't already doing it, now's the time to be creating or establishing something.
No, I think you're right. And I was like the classic example of like someone I would describe as someone who was always looking. I wanted to do work as long as I knew it would lead to some comfort.
Mm,
Like, I would, go and like do the least amount of work to get to some form of pleasure or comfort. And the like what we talked about, that whole switch in my mindset of like actually putting the effort, enjoying the act of creating
mhm.
is much more fulfilling than anything that you can consume or watch or like. Now I'm still guilty of going on Twitter and wasting a ton of time and doing other stuff,
Yeah.
but more and more I try to like, purposely focus my attention on, no, here's this larger mission, here's what you could do. And it's just it's so enjoyable to just do things that are, it, right? Making your own music, the things that are your own creation,
Mhm.
there's something, like, I think innate in humans, that if you don't do that, like, a part of you dies.
Yeah.
I think you have to create.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Awesome, man. So, Bill, it's been a pleasure talking to you. But before we wrap this up, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
Sure. Yeah, it's been great, Zuby. I appreciate you having me on. So online, like I said, Twitter, my handle is at future in mind, 2 Ds, one word. So that's like the main place I broadcast and tweet pretty much every day. And then the Men of Character conference is www.menofcharacterconference.com. So all one word. And then in a couple of days here, probably by the time you release the Zuby, I'll have a place for people to pre-order those watches that I'll be ordering, because apparently people like them just as I did.
Awesome.
So, yep.
Awesome, man. Make sure you follow Bill online. Keep up the good work, dude. It's been awesome to talk to you. Third time lucky. I'm sure we got it this time. So,
Yeah, I think we got it this time, Zuby. Appreciate you,
awesome, man.
man.
Have a good day, bro. Take care.
All right, you too.
Bye
Later.
bye.